What's up, everybody? It's your boy Al. Happy Friday. We're on the eve of Fury versus Ngannou. I know a lot of people are excited or at least curious about that. Me personally, I want to give you my thoughts on that and what I think it means, the fact that this fight is even happening, what it means for boxing in the heavyweight division as a whole. First off, the fight, obviously the intrigue. Fury has beaten all comers with the exception of AJ, who he doesn't need to beat right now, and Usyk, which I'd like to see that fight happen in the near future. But he's fighting the king of the UFC, at least in the heavyweights, Ngannou, who is a one-punch explosive knockout puncher. By me personally, I'm not excited at all about this. I got to be honest with you, I'm not excited at all because I just don't see any way this is going to be remotely entertaining. You're talking about Tyson Fury. Listen, the Tyson Fury took apart Deontay Wilder, who's been fighting since he was in his early 20s. Then certainly he's going to take apart Francis Ngannou, who is a MMA fighter and who has no business being in the boxing ring. I know that he has that one-punch explosive power, but somebody please convince me that his one-punch explosive power is more or just the same or greater than Deontay Wilder. I don't think it is. And if Fury can survive Wilder 3 times, then trust me, he can survive Ngannou. I don't see this fight as being entertaining. Why? I just don't think Ngannou will know what he's doing in there. You're talking about a guy who, when he's in the UFC, he gets tired easy. He stands around, he swings wild, he misses a lot. That's not going to, and that's against guys who aren't boxing experts. Now you're going in there against a 6'9" guy who can move, who can slip, who can counter, who can shoulder roll, and who can make you pay. And I think it's going to be, ugly for him. I don't think that it's going to be a fight where even Fury comes out and takes it that serious. When you're looking at the pre-fight hype, press conference and all of that, a lot of joking around, a lot of playing, a lot of that stuff. So I think this is a publicity deal, for both of these guys to get some money. It is what it is. But I think the bigger picture with that is that this is another sign that boxing is in trouble. I think it's a sign that boxing is in trouble, particularly the heavyweight division, because I don't remember in my lifetime where boxing in the heavyweight division, well, I could say, I'm going to retract that before I even made that statement. Boxing during the Klitschko era was pretty boring. But it's getting to the point now where the heavyweight division, the heavyweight boxing is beginning to be an absolute joke. And heavyweight boxing has always carried the day for boxing. With the greatness of the Fab Four, with the greatness of Sugar Ray Robinson, with the greatness of Mayweather and Roy Jones and Oscar De La Hoya and all those guys throughout the years, boxing has been carried, the day has been carried by the heavyweights. And so this is a sign that heavyweight boxing is on the decline. Boxing is on the decline. It's been on the decline for many years. It's been on the decline primarily because boxing doesn't get the athletes that it used to get. Now, I made this statement on Big Fish podcast. The reason why boxing is not what it was, the skill level is not what it was, the athleticism even isn't what it was. Boxing before, in the days up until probably the Klitschko's, got the greatest athletes in the world. So when you saw the heavyweight champion of the world, you were looking at a guy who wasn't just the best boxer, but would get out on the football field or a basketball court and get smoked. No, you were looking at a guy who was the best athlete in the world. People don't really understand that. When you go back and look at some interviews of some of your greats athletes in other sports, baseball, basketball, football, who played in the 60s and 70s, they'll tell you in a lot of their stories, a lot of interviews I've seen, a lot of these guys talk about how they started off going to the boxing gym because boxing was king. They wanted to be boxers first, but they couldn't cut it. It was too tough. They didn't have what it takes. So they tried baseball, they tried boxing. They tried basketball, they tried football, and they excelled at those sports because boxing was the toughest of the tough. So what I say that boxing was the toughest of the tough, what that meant for boxing was that boxing got the greatest, most premier athletes on the planet. Boxing didn't get second-rate athletes. Now you look at boxing, and boxing gets the rejects from the other sports, right? You get the guys who couldn't play basketball, he comes, tries to box. The guy who couldn't play football, he comes and tries to box. And you see the lack of athleticism telling on the fact that these are second-rate athletes. These are not the athletes that we once used to get, right? You look at a guy like George Foreman, who was the heavyweight champion in the 1970s, came back and was heavyweight champion again in the 1990s. No other sport could somebody retire or be at their best in the 70s, retire, come back in the 90s and be the best of the best. But it happened in boxing. Why? Because the athleticism declined over the years. You look at a guy like Muhammad Ali. 6'3", 220 pounds in his prime, moved like lightning, could move like the wind, fast as lightning, could punch, could do all of these things. His athleticism was off the charts, right? And that was in the 60s, 62, 63 was his peak, was his prime. And you look in 2023, we have yet to see someone in the heavyweight division match that kind of athleticism, that kind of gifted ability. And it's been over 60 plus years since we've seen Muhammad Ali. But you've seen basketball increase, you've seen football athleticism increase, you've seen other sports with athleticism increase, but in boxing it's declined. And it's declined because boxing isn't getting the same kind of athletes that boxing used to get. The Joe Lewises of the world. Even in the 80s, when you look at Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, those guys were not just great boxers, they were great athletes all the way around. What happened with boxing, in particular heavyweight division, is a lot of the athletes, because the sport of boxing really has always been a sport where as soon as someone finds a different way, an easy way to make money, they exit the sport, right? That's why initially in the inception of boxing, in the days of General Jim Corbett and John L. Sullivan, boxing was dominated by the Irish and the Jews. There aren't any more Irish and Jewish fighters anymore. Why? Because they assimilated. They found other ways in this country to make money. Then you have the Italians come into the boxing, but they found other ways to make money. Italians started to rapidly get out of boxing. And then you saw black fighters come into play, allowed the opportunity, right? And over the years, even though black fighters have thrived in boxing, other avenues to make that kind of money have opened up throughout the years. Football, baseball, basketball, sports where you turn pro and you get guaranteed millions. You know, you get drafted into the NBA, you get guaranteed millions. You get drafted into the NFL high enough, guaranteed millions. Baseball, not guaranteed millions initially when you come up from the minors, but those contracts, once you get your first contract, reach arbitration, those contracts are astronomical, right? Boxing, you can fight 20, 30 fights, still not see $1 million payday. So boxing is a sport that when people have found other ways, easier ways to make money, they go to it. And so that's what's happened in boxing, right? You take a Ray Lewis, for example. Ray Lewis would have been a heavyweight in the 70s, right? You take a Allen Iverson, who had no business on the basketball court when you really think about it, right? 6 feet tall, 150, 60 pounds, really probably would have been the welterweight champion of the world in the 80s or the 70s, right? LeBron, well, maybe not LeBron James because he's 6'9", but a lot of these guys who you see on the football field and other sports would have been great boxers. Take a Nate Robinson, who again had no business on the basketball court when you really think about it. 5'4", 5'5", 5'6", would have been a great lightweight, middleweight maybe, because he's a stocky build. But basketball became the sexier sport than boxing over the years, and so a lot of undersized guys, instead of going to a sport they could have been thrived at, like boxing, went to other sports because boxing lost its sports sex appeal. But you have, you look at those guys, they could have been great boxers, but instead they went on to other sports. You take Muhammad Ali. If he was coming along today, he'd be a quarterback. A George Foreman, if he was coming along today, he'd be a linebacker. A Joe Frazier, if he was coming along today, a tailback. But boxing was still king in those days, so you boxed first. But what we're seeing now is we're seeing boxing full of rejects. What I mean by rejects are guys who couldn't be great in other sports come to boxing, and it tails. You ever sit down and watch a heavyweight fight with two up-and-coming heavyweights now? It's sloppy. The punches are sloppy. There's no crisp combinations. Nobody's putting anything together. The footwork is horrible because the athleticism is lower tier. So you're seeing all of this now. When you have a guy like Tyson Fury, who was born and bred, doesn't look the part, right? That's what people have a problem with Tyson Fury. Doesn't look the part. Big, tubby midsection, Michelin man looking body. But he's a boxer through and through. Crunk gym ties, raised into fight, has crunk gym ties, has the cleverness, has the boxing pedigree. He gets in there and destroys these guys, even looking like he looks, because he's born and bred to box. And so for him, people like Wilder and all these other fighters, Usyk may be a different story because Usyk also has pedigree, but Usyk would have to deal with the size. But these guys that Wilder has, that Fury has to fight, they're not pure boxers. They're guys who are trying out boxing because their football career stalled. I remember there was a heavyweight a few years ago. I think his name was Jennings, Brian Jennings. Failed football player, right? Good boxer, but not great. We don't need to see good in boxing. We're used to great. Heavyweight's great, right? Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Larry Holmes, Mike Tyson, Riddick Bowe, Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis. We're used to greatness, right? And so we're seeing now a decline because boxing doesn't get the athletes that it got before. It doesn't have the great athletes. It doesn't have the pristine athletes. Those athletes are going to basketball. They're going to football. They're going to other sports. Another problem that I see, and this isn't necessarily, and by the way, let me stop there. I'm going to give props to Tyson Fury for, number one, the comeback that he made in his career. Coming back from that kind of mental health issue that he had. Props to you, bro. Beating Deontay Wilder the way you did, getting up from that violent knockdown to get up, get the draw, which you probably deserve to win. I think you deserve to win. And then coming back to do what you've done. People like the crap on Fury. I don't. The guy's a pure boxer through and through. I can see through race and all of that and size to see that the guy's a pure boxer. So props to you. So he's done his part to bring excitement about fighting the guys that he should have fought. Fighting Wilder when people didn't think he would fight Wilder. Fighting Klitschko when people didn't think he would fight Klitschko. So I got to give him his props. But with that being said, another issue with the heavyweight division, and it started during the Klitschko era, right? When you think about it, primarily the heavyweight championship of the world, the boxing heavyweight championship of the world, is primarily almost 100%, not quite, but almost 100%, a United States championship. Going back to the days of Jim Corbett when he beat Sullivan for the first title. Lost to Fitzsimmons with the solar plex punch. Fitzsimmons from England. Fitzsimmons lost to the Boilermaker, Jim Jeffries, American, who retired. Championship from that point went to Gibbons, who was another foreigner from England. Then came to Jack Johnson, American. From him to Jess Willard, American. To Dempsey, American. To Tunney, American. Went to, I can't remember who it went to after that. I think it went to Jack Sharkey. After that, foreigner, Max Melling, went to Germany. Came back to for a little while. Came back with Sharkey, went back over with Canera, who's an Italian, came back with Max Baer. Baer lost to Braddock, Cinderella Man, who's an American, Lewis, an American, Ezzard Charles, an American, Walcott, an American, Marciano, an American, then went to Patterson, an American, then List, an American, Ali, American, Foreman, Frazier, Americans, Holmes, American. So it's been primarily up until, the days of Holyfield, Bowe, then Lewis, who was an American, but did fight, did score knockouts, did fight all the prominent Americans he was supposed to fight except for Riddick Bowe. That's the fight that we never got to see. We'll talk about that. We'll do another video about the great fights we didn't get. We'll talk about that. We'll do a video on that. But the heavyweight championship world has been primarily a United States title. And so when it left to go to Eastern Europe with the Klitschko's for a decade and a half, it was kind of like out of sight, out of mind. With the advent of social media, cable, streaming services, and all these other things that began to come about, and other sports thriving, NFL, NBA, the heavyweight championship of the world kind of became out of sight, out of mind, right? And so boxing, with it being out of sight, out of mind, the heavyweight championship, it lost its luster, which caused young kids to not want to be the champ anymore because it didn't mean anything, because the title's over there. For about 15, 20 years, the title's over in Eastern Europe. So kids growing up don't want to be the heavyweight champion of the world because, it's over there. But you want to be Mike, you want to be Kobe, you want to be LeBron, you want to be, Peyton Manning, you want to be Edgerrin James or LaDainian Tomlinson or Barry Sanders or Randy Moss or Tom Brady, because they're right in your face, as a young American. But with the heavyweight championships way over there somewhere, that guy's not inspiring you to want to pick up a pair of gloves and go box. And so we have this movement now, because of those factors that I mentioned, we have this movement of diminished heavyweight championship boxers or heavyweight boxers. And it's not going to get any better. And especially as the UFC continues to thrive and flourish, as it continues to do its thing. Boxing, and I already did a video earlier about, Showtime. After HBO already cut boxing, Showtime couldn't boxing. So I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not going to lie. But we'll see what this thing does. You let me know in your comment section. Tell me what you think is causing the decline of boxing, causing the decline of the heavyweight division. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends there's a guy named Al who's on who's talking real boxing, knows what he's talking about, knows the real deal. I'm going to be doing a podcast with my man Big Mike this Saturday, so I'm excited about that, to get with my former trainer Mike, and we're going to talk a little bit about some boxing, some hypothetical dream matchups, Ali versus Tyson, stuff like that. So look forward to seeing you guys get on that as well. Holla at your boy Al. We'll be back shortly, talk about some more stuff you really want to talk about in the boxing world. Peace.